First encounters of youth. In the quiet, sunlit hallways of a modest suburban high school, two young girls met for the very first time. Both were strangers at the beginning of their teenage journey. One, a quiet, thoughtful bookworm with big, ambitious dreams. The other, an outspoken, energetic soul who always found a way to light up any room. Their backgrounds could not have been more different, yet fate seemed to nudge them together, pairing them as seatmates during the very first week of class. At first, their interactions were tentative, limited to shy smiles and polite exchanges about homework or school projects. But it didn't take long before casual conversations grew into hours-long discussions about their favorite books, music, and more importantly, their secret aspirations. They confided in one another about the hopes and fears that kept them up at night, how one longed to open her own business someday, and how the other wished to prove herself, not just to her family, but to the whole world. Their friendship blossomed naturally, built on trust and genuine care. Every morning, they would eagerly wait for each other at the school gate, often bringing along hastily packed breakfast to share. Lunch breaks were spent together in their favorite spot under the ancient banyan tree in the schoolyard, hidden away from the noisy crowd. Sometimes they would skip out on after-school clubs just to help each other study, cheer each other up after a bad test, or simply dream together about distant futures. The two became inseparable, with many classmates even joking that one could hardly be found without the other nearby. They created their own little world, filled with inside jokes, handwritten notes slipped into lockers, and promises to always be each other's biggest supporters. The trust between them deepened further as they shared family secrets, personal anxieties, and stories not even their parents knew. Over the years, their connection became a constant amidst all the changes that adolescence brings. Shifting friendships, family problems, the ups and downs of first crushes, and the pressures of final exams. Whenever one felt like giving up, the other would step in to encourage and remind her of her dreams. Their bond was both a source of comfort and a driving force, giving each girl the confidence to reach for goals she might not have dared to chase alone. Most importantly, they promised to hold on to their friendship beyond graduation, even as life led them down different paths. One late summer evening, perched atop the school bleachers as the sun set, they made a pact. One day, they would build something meaningful together, side by side, no matter how impossible it seemed. Their youthful optimism was contagious, and they both truly believed that, armed with their unbreakable loyalty, they could take on the world. Little did they know, this early bond would serve not only as the foundation of shared dreams, but also as the test bed for the deepest heartbreak and betrayal they would ever experience. But in these early days, none of those shadows existed. All that mattered was the warmth of newfound friendship and the unshakable promise that, together, anything was possible. Building dreams together. Years passed, and the promises made in the golden light of their youth became the roots of a shared vision. College came and went, with each girl gravitating toward fields that fit their natural strengths. One dove into business administration, excelling in numbers and analysis, while the other brought creative flair and interpersonal skills, choosing marketing and communications. Throughout their studies, late-night calls and weekend meetups became brainstorming sessions, shaping fledgling ideas into concrete plans. Their bond, forged in adolescence, now grew into a partnership defined by ambition and mutual respect. With graduation approaching, a decision that had only ever been a daydream suddenly demanded real-world action. Should they take the plunge and build something from scratch? After countless cups of coffee and honest conversations, excitement overshadowed trepidation. They pooled the little savings they'd managed to set aside, and together officially registered their own small business, a boutique that brought together both their strengths and spoke to a gap they'd identified in the local market. The very first days of entrepreneurship were a whirlwind. They scouted potential locations, weighed the pros and cons of each, and eventually settled on a cozy yet affordable shopfront on a quiet street corner. Their hands were constantly busy, painting walls, assembling furniture, sourcing products, and creating branding materials. Every decision was a careful collaboration, marked by spirited debates, but always ending in laughter or a shared late-night meal. There was no clear separation between work and personal life in those early months. They taught themselves accounting, dealt with unreliable vendors, and navigated the labyrinth of local permits. Schedules were intense, finances tight, and nerves sometimes frayed, but together they faced every obstacle head-on. Whenever exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, the memory of all they had already overcome and the excitement of shaping their future gave them strength. Perhaps the most rewarding, and at times, the most challenging aspect of their partnership was the sheer transparency they maintained. No secret went unspoken. Not a single worry about a late payment, a customer complaint, or a bold idea for expansion was kept from the other. Theirs was a business built first and foremost on trust, fueled by a shared sense of purpose and an unspoken promise to always put friendship first. Their families, skeptical at first, gradually came around as the months passed and small victories began to stack up. A glowing customer review, a bustling grand opening, a modest profit posted at the end of their first quarter. Friends and college acquaintances watched with admiration, some even joining in to help during the busiest weekends or holiday sales. The boutique became more than just a livelihood. It was living proof of what could happen when two people combined not just their talents, but their hearts and histories. As challenges grew more complex, inventory issues, staffing problems, competition from bigger chains, the two girls quickly learned that unity was their greatest asset. They tackled late-night emergencies together, leaned on each other's strengths, and celebrated every milestone, no matter how small. Each setback was dissected, lessons learned, and strategies improved. And through it all, their partnership was unwavering, tested but never shaken. What neither could have predicted, however, was how quickly their success would attract both opportunity and envy. As the boutique's reputation spread, so too did the pressures of growing expectations. Yet at this stage, fresh with hope and determination, they believed, perhaps naively, that together they could weather any storm, undaunted and undivided. Unbeknownst to them, however, the seeds of future challenges were quietly taking root, fed by ambition and the unrelenting tides of success and adversity. First, taste of success. The morning the boutique's monthly report finally turned from red to black was chilly, bright, and utterly ordinary. Yet for the two founders, it felt extraordinary. It was only a modest profit, but the exhilaration it brought was immeasurable, a hard-won testament to every sleepless night and every carefully weighed decision they had made together. The little shop, once scraped nearly empty by startup costs and hope, was finally finding its place in the world. In those first few months after opening their doors to the public, the business had experienced all the anxieties and unpredictability that come with a new venture. Sometimes customers would trickle in only to leave empty-handed. Marketing strategies were refined and sharpened, and the two women quickly learned the subtle art of reading each client's preferences and tailoring service to create memorable shopping experiences. Every sale, no matter how small, was celebrated, and every setback deconstructed late into the night over cups of cheap coffee. What truly set their shop apart, something customers noticed almost immediately, was the atmosphere of warmth and authenticity radiating out from behind the counter. The women's friendship was evident for all to see. It brought a unique energy to the space. They welcomed customers not just as buyers, but as guests in a dream they were building together. Word of mouth spread, first among friends, then among the larger community, and soon their boutique began to draw familiar faces back, bringing new ones along with them. Small milestones kept their spirits aloft. A local fashion blogger featured them in a glowing review, which sent a wave of curious shoppers through their doors. A handmade jewelry line, curated over long evenings and laughter, quickly became a bestseller after a customer posted about it online. Slowly but surely, their brand started to take root in the neighborhood, with regulars stopping for friendly chats and the comfort of a place that felt as if it belonged to them too. With success, however, came a host of new challenges and responsibilities, ones they had only theorized about in their college business classes. Inventory needed to be tracked with razor precision. They debated the right time to expand their product range. For every achievement, a new question arose. Should they stay local and continue building their reputation, or take a risk and open an online store? Could they afford to hire part-time help, or would that strain their delicate finances? Days blurred, packed with activity, negotiating with suppliers, sorting through shipment delays, responding to customer feedback with care and urgency. Yet they tackled these issues with an almost infectious optimism. It wasn't just gasoline for their ambitions. Their positive outlook was a lifeline during stumbles, such as the time a bulk order of products turned out defective, or when a well-intentioned but failed marketing campaign drained far more from their budget than anticipated. Despite everything, their unshakable trust in each other was a constant. They split duties intuitively, each covering for the other during exhaustion, family emergencies, or bouts of creative block. The more their responsibilities grew, the more they relied on each other's strengths. Disagreements were inevitable, but always resolved through honest conversation. In private, they celebrated one another's victories, an insightful business pitch, a successful event, a glowing testimonial from a longtime client. Behind the scenes, the main character's loyalty and openness with her best friend deepened. She shared not only business issues, but also her personal doubts, fears about the future, and ideas too bold to voice to anyone else. Her friend, to all appearances, reciprocated with equal candor. The two developed a near telepathic understanding, finishing each other's sentences and anticipating problems before they arose. It was more than a partnership. It was as if their hearts and ambitions had fully intertwined. As their boutique continued to blossom, the surrounding community took notice. Invitations to local business seminars and networking events started to appear regularly in their inbox. High school teachers and old classmates, once doubtful of their ability to thrive in the competitive arena, stopped by to see the fruits of their perseverance. Each of these moments fed the growing sense of accomplishment building between them. Their business felt unstoppable, a living symbol of shared passion and dedication. Yet even as success became their new reality, subtle shifts began to take place. Increased sales brought with them not just financial rewards, but the mounting demands of record-keeping, strategic planning, and time management. The best friend, who had always been outgoing and persuasive, now spent more time dealing with suppliers and handling negotiations. This division of labor seemed logical and natural. After all, each gravitated to her own strengths. The main character continued to pour her energy into customer relations, visual merchandising, and back-end operations. Despite being stretched thin, they made the conscious decision to keep communicating openly, checking in with each other after especially busy days or when problems threatened to spiral out of control. To the outside world, Their professional and personal lives appeared seamless, a model of balanced teamwork. As the holiday season approached, anticipation and anxiety peaked. This would be their boutique's first major sales period, and they were determined to make it count. Together, they brainstormed imaginative store displays, crafted personalized gift wrapping, and organized a community giveaway that brought in new potential clients. The turnout exceeded their expectations. For nights on end, they worked well past closing, wrapping gifts and ensuring that every detail, from lighting to background music, was perfect. The results were exhilarating. Not only did their revenue surge to new highs, but local media featured their boutique as a must-visit holiday destination. Customers lined up for their unique services, and photos of the shop, filled with laughter and warmth, quickly circulated online. By the time they closed the store after the last rush of shoppers on Christmas Eve, they were exhausted in the best possible way. As they counted the register and locked up, the two friends lingered in the empty shop, surrounded by the evidence of a dream realized. A dream powered by unwavering devotion, countless sacrifices, and a rare bond most could only hope to experience once in a lifetime. They toasted their success that night with takeout boxes on the floor, reflecting not just on financial achievements, but on all the small moments that made their journey worthwhile. Yet success is rarely a static destination. In quiet, private moments, each woman began to sense how their shared enterprise, the business they had once imagined as the ultimate symbol of trust and teamwork, was slowly evolving along with the people who'd built it. Growth brought new joys and new questions. Each struggled privately to balance ambition with the realities of friendship and the weight of responsibility. But in that brilliant early winter, as their first true taste of success manifested all around them, neither could have imagined just how much would soon change, or how fragile the foundations of trust could be, even in the most golden of partnerships. The sting of betrayal. Late winter sunlight filtered through the boutique's frosted windows, casting long, golden beams onto shelves laden with the products they once chose together. From the outside, nothing seemed amiss. The shop still buzzed with energy during the day, and the familiar scent of roasted coffee lingered in the evenings after closing time. Yet beneath the calm surface, subtle currents of unease had begun to swirl in the life of the main character. At first, she noticed only the smallest things out of place: invoices tucked away in a different folder than usual, supplier emails marked as read before she'd seen them, customer complaints addressed without her involvement. These lapses felt insignificant, easy to dismiss as the result of stress or the increasingly frantic demands of their prospering business. Still, a nagging discomfort crept into her thoughts during quiet moments, stirring memories of late-night talks about absolute honesty and the sacredness of trust. Her best friend had always been the more assertive of the pair, charming, persuasive, and seemingly born for negotiation. In recent weeks, that liveliness had evolved. She seemed always busy, often on phone calls that ended abruptly when anyone entered the room. When questioned, she would smile, brush off concerns, and promise everything was fine. The main character tried to believe her. After all, hadn't they built this entire enterprise on the bedrock of friendship? Surely the stress of expansion was making her paranoid. Then came the requests for signatures on routine paperwork. Her friend would drop thick envelopes onto her desk late at night while she was exhausted from a busy day, assuring her that it was just standard procedure, a new supplier agreement, a minor change with the business license, some revised tax forms. Each time, the main character skimmed the pages, trusting the one person she believed would never deceive her. Trust, after all, was their greatest strength. But soon, the changes became more pronounced. The accounting system's password no longer worked. bank notifications mysteriously failed to appear in her inbox. When she tried to schedule a meeting with their accountant, she was told, politely but firmly, that only the other partner had authority to discuss their financials. These mounting obstacles turned confusion into dread. Something, she realized, was terribly amiss. One rainy afternoon, fueled by equal parts anxiety and determination, she arrived at the shop early. Not out of suspicion, but unable to shake her restless thoughts. She found her best friend in the back office, hunched over a laptop and flanked by a stranger in a crisp suit. The two stopped speaking as soon as she entered, a silence so heavy she immediately felt like an intruder in her own dream. "We're just finishing some routine business," her friend smiled, her voice calm but her eyes darting away. "Go ahead and take care of the front. We'll join you in a minute." She did as asked, unable to focus on inventory or customers. Her mind raced. Since when did routine business require secrecy, or strangers who carried legal pads instead of shopping bags? The sense of control she had once felt, the sense of belonging, was slipping between her fingers. The confrontation, when it came, was as cold and clinical as that rain-soaked day. Her best friend, her confidant, the one she'd dreamed and toiled beside for years, presented her with a set of documents already bearing her signature. The stranger, who introduced himself curtly as a business consultant, explained that the company had been restructured. "For its own good," he said, without looking at her. Her ownership, her role, her dreams, formally and legally, had all been transferred away. She was out. The betrayal took her breath away. In those first few moments, words failed her. Her voice cracked when she tried to protest, and her mind reeled as she tried to piece together the timeline. Each hastily signed paper, each night she'd chosen trust over scrutiny, now came rushing back with bone-deep regret. It was not a hostile outsider who had destroyed her place in the company. It was her best friend, the one she'd trusted above all. Tears stung her eyes as she listened to vague apologies and rationalizations. Talk of doing what's best for the company, of taking things in a new direction, and the classic, "It's nothing personal." She wanted to scream. It was the most personal betrayal imaginable. The days that followed blurred into a slow-motion nightmare. She was left with nothing but her memories and a few boxes of personal belongings hastily packed from the back office. Her name was scrubbed from the business's online presence. Former colleagues sent awkward, apologetic texts. Customers who had always loved her warmth and sincerity asked about her absence, only to receive vague or misleading answers. At home, she oscillated between numb exhaustion and storms of fury. Sometimes she replayed every moment, every shared secret, every communal triumph, with a sense of crushing loss. Other times, bitterness bubbled up. Why hadn't she seen the warning signs? How could years of friendship unravel into something so ugly, so transactional? She withdrew from friends, unable to stomach the pity in their voices or the questions in their eyes. Nights were sleepless. Meals lost all taste. Isolation became her unwanted companion, but a strange clarity grew within the desolation. She forced herself to go over the finances, the paperwork, the overlooked details, determined to understand not just how the betrayal had happened, but why she had failed to protect herself. Shame wrestled with heartbreak as she saw, in cold numbers and legal terms, just how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. The final trauma was not just the loss of her business, but of her faith that loyalty could triumph over ambition. Yet even in that bleakness, one truth rang out above the storm. She had built something from nothing once before. Every lasting customer, every original idea, those had been hers as much as her friends. And as impossible as it seemed, in those first raw, lonely days, she resolved not to let betrayal be the final word in her story. But for now, the future was a blank page, and the girl who once believed in endless possibility sat quietly, the weight of heartbreak crushing but not extinguishing the spark that had fueled her all along. Rising from the depths of pain, for weeks, her world shuddered under the weight of betrayal. Days merged uneventfully into nights. She lived in a haze, drifting through her small apartment like a ghost. In those first mornings after losing the business, she struggled to even pull herself out of bed. The colorful spark that had once defined her, her drive, her passion, her unwavering optimism, felt suffocated beneath the thick fog of disappointment and heartbreak. Family and friends urged her to let go and move on. Some offered gentle hugs and kind words, while others preached cold pragmatism. "You're young. You will start again," they insisted. But their comfort only intensified the ache inside her. How could she explain the hollowness of witnessing not just a company, but years of friendship, trust, and memories swept away in one calculated blow? She avoided old haunts. The thought of bumping into former customers or suppliers sent a twist of shame through her stomach. Grocery store aisles became obstacle courses, and the sound of children laughing outside the boutique she had poured her soul into, was too much to bear. Often, she would find herself wandering the city at dusk, letting the hum of distant traffic fill the emptiness inside. Her apartment, which had once been a place of creativity and warmth, now seemed suffocating. Cardboard boxes filled with leftover paperwork and trinkets from the shop stood stacked in the corner, untouched and gathering dust. Most nights, she couldn't find the energy to cook, so she subsisted on convenience meals and lukewarm tea. Shadows stretched across the walls, marking the slow progress of time. But pain, as relentless as it is, cannot last forever. Gradually, in those long and lonely hours, she began to remember small fragments of herself. Her stubbornness, her capacity for hope, and most importantly, the lessons she'd carried from childhood. She recalled the pact made with her best friend atop the old-school bleachers to build something meaningful, together or apart. It started small. She made lists to stave off the aimlessness, jotting down all she had learned: vendor contacts, marketing tricks, inventory systems, even mistakes that had cost them dearly. She reread every email exchange and invoice, at first out of morbid curiosity, but soon out of a need to learn and fortify herself. Somewhere along the way, grief began to morph into a quiet determination. She bought a new notebook and dedicated the first page to a simple mantra: "This is not the end of your story." Every day, no matter how low she felt, she forced herself to write down 3 things she was grateful for, even if they were just a patch of sunlight on the windowsill or a stranger's smile at the coffee shop. The road to recovery was neither linear nor sudden. Some days, progress slipped through her fingers and she tumbled back into loneliness or anger. But each time, she rose a little faster. In the quietest moments, when the city slept and her heart was racing with old pain and new ideas, she would sit by her window, sketching out possible futures. What if she built something new? Not to prove anything to her betrayer, but to herself. Her first real step came with an email. One afternoon, scanning through her neglected inbox, she noticed several unanswered messages from an old supplier, asking if she would be interested in a collaborative pop-up event. She hesitated, imagining the whispers and looks she would receive, but something stubborn pushed her onward. She replied with a simple, polite note, agreeing to talk. The meeting was awkward at first. The supplier eyed her carefully, gently skirting around the topic of the split. But as they talked about possible partnerships, old instincts resurfaced. She could still negotiate, still brainstorm, still make people believe in a vision. They agreed to test the waters with a small craft fair table. Low risk, no expectations. The preparations consumed her in the best way. She poured herself into designing products and displays, painstakingly curating her selection. Each handmade item felt like a tiny piece of resilience, a silent declaration that she was still here, still fighting. On the day of the fair, though anxious and trembling, she stood proudly behind her table, the familiar rhythm of interacting with customers coming back as naturally as breathing. Shoppers lingered, drawn by her warmth and enthusiasm. Many recognized her, expressing genuine surprise and delight. Their support fed her battered confidence. By the end of the day, she had sold nearly everything. It was a small victory, financially insignificant compared to her old business, but emotionally monumental. Bolstered, she decided not to settle for mere survival. Drawing on the lessons of the past, especially the need for caution and due diligence, she began sketching out a plan for a new, more innovative venture. This time, she refused to rush or let loneliness drive her into unwise partnerships. She networked as never before, connecting with small business owner groups, mentors, and legal advisors. Her living room soon transformed into a creative workshop. Walls were covered with mind maps and sample color palettes, the floor filled with boxes of raw materials and packaging prototypes. Friends and family, noticing her transformation, offered support in ways big and small. Proofreading marketing copy, helping with social media, or just delivering a hot meal when she forgot to eat. Slowly, her confidence regrew, not from bouncing back to the same heights, but from knowing she could rise from nothing. She joined entrepreneur forums online, where she found a supportive community and even attracted 2 talented but humble team members who shared her values. The foundation of her new company was built not just on ambition, but on empathy, transparency, and trust. Qualities she now refused to compromise. From the pain of betrayal, she wove a sense of purpose. Her new business would support not only herself, but also other young entrepreneurs, especially women who had been overlooked or underestimated. She was determined to craft a culture where every voice mattered and every contract would be written with honesty and clarity. Her resilience, once forged through friendship, was now steeled by experience. The shadows of the past lingered. Trust would not come easily again. But as she sipped coffee late at night, reviewing orders for her tiny online shop, she felt something that had eluded her for months. Hope. This hope wasn't naive anymore. It was hard-won and grounded in everything she had lost and found. And so, out of bitterness and grief, she carved for herself a renewed identity. With each new challenge, she reminded herself that falling is not defeat. Staying down is. No matter how far she had been pushed or how desperately she missed the person she used to call her best friend, she chose to keep building. Brick by brick, day by day, she raised herself from the depths of pain, not in search of revenge, but in pursuit of her own worth, her own dreams, and the promise that her story, this time, belonged to her alone. Rising and shining, the dawn that greeted her first year as an independent entrepreneur felt different. No longer burdened by the weight of betrayal's sting, she approached each day with a fresh determination. A kind of hope that was both measured and fierce. Her journey had reshaped her outlook on life and leadership, forging a wisdom that only hardship could bring. Her new company was born not just from necessity, but from a vision evolved by pain and redemption. Unlike her first venture, which had grown organically from friendship, this business was crafted with intention, structure, and clear values. She knew exactly what she wanted: an organization where transparency was culture, not compliance, where collaboration trumped competition, and where everyone, from interns to senior staff, felt empowered and heard. From the outset, she embraced an open-door policy. Mornings began with team huddles marked by honest updates and vibrant brainstorming sessions. Her two co-founders, each bringing diverse talents and personalities, were chosen not only for their skill, but for their humility and passion. There were still long days and nights, yet the energy was different, more focused, less fraught with the emotional pitfalls of blurred boundaries. Shared meals and small celebrations punctuated breakthroughs, helping the team bond over triumphs, both big and small. Instead of sticking with the standard retail formula, she ventured boldly into digital commerce. Leveraging lessons learned, she built a nimble online platform for curated, ethically sourced goods. Everything from handcrafted accessories to sustainable homewares. E-commerce gave her company the reach she'd once dreamed of, enabling collaboration with artists across the country and extending opportunities to small, local creators often ignored by big chains. She was determined never again to rely solely on intuition. This time, every key business decision was made with data-driven analysis and strategic foresight. They invested in customer research, learned about shifting market demands, and built adaptive supply chains. Problems didn't unsettle her. They became catalysts for smarter solutions. When a logistics issue threatened to delay a major holiday launch, her team worked together, innovating a pre-order campaign and leveraging social media transparency, turning potential disappointment into excitement and record engagement. The growth was not explosive, but it was steady and resilient. Within the first 18 months, the new business eclipsed her former boutique's top revenue month, a milestone she privately celebrated with humble gratitude. More meaningful, perhaps, was the recognition her company began to earn: glowing reviews online, mentions in small business roundups, and invitations to participate in women in business mentorship panels. For the first time in her professional life, she felt truly seen for her abilities, not just her willingness to sacrifice or support others. Her management style evolved, blending kindness with clear boundaries. She encouraged personal development for her staff, even underwriting relevant courses and championing their side projects. This culture of mutual respect and support was infectious. Her team members became advocates for the business, attracting like-minded talent and loyal customers. Failures were treated as learning opportunities. After a disappointing product rollout, a team-wide workshop dissected every misstep, not to assign blame, but to design better launch processes for the future. When a competitor poached one of their suppliers, instead of panicking, she reached out to other small artisan groups, forging new partnerships that not only replaced lost inventory, but diversified their offerings in exciting ways. Perhaps most transformative was her redefined view of success. It was no longer about the size of the client list or monthly profit figures. She measured her achievements by the integrity of her decisions and the stories of those she empowered. The new venture established a charitable fund, donating a portion of profits to young women starting their own creative businesses. They hosted workshops, both in person and online, sharing the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, the highs and the lows, with candor and empathy. Her story resonated with many, not as the tale of someone who had triumphed without pain, but of someone who learned to rise from it. Word of her company's integrity spread organically. Local news outlets featured their sustainable initiatives, and a popular lifestyle influencer praised the transparency and warmth she and her team projected. One viral post showed the company's founder hand-delivering a misrouted package to a customer. For her, These moments felt more fulfilling than any financial report. Yet, as her new enterprise flourished, she never forgot the struggle behind the scenes. There were still nights when self-doubt crept in, or when memories of loss threatened to cloud her vision. She handled those moments with quiet rituals, journaling, walks in the park, or calls with the friends who had stood by her through her lowest points. Rarely did she talk about her previous company, or the betrayal that had forced her onto this new path. Not out of denial, but because she had finally learned to live facing forward. One spring morning, she passed by her old boutique. It looked different now. New branding, new faces behind the register, a palpable sense of tension in the air. She felt no resentment, only a somber relief. Her journey had diverged, and she had built something that could never be taken away by a signature or a legal loophole. She walked on, her steps light. Her company, now thriving, attracted more than just customers. It inspired a growing community. People gathered in forums and social spaces built around her business, sharing their dreams and setbacks, supporting one another as she once wished someone had supported her. She replied to their messages personally whenever possible, forever grateful for the web of resilience and hope she'd helped foster. Many evenings, after the last email was sent, she would look around her busy, joy-filled workspace and remember the silence and darkness of those early, painful months. She had learned that true success was not about being unbreakable, but about the willingness to rebuild stronger, wiser, and more compassionate after every storm. If anyone asked the secret behind her rise, she would smile and say, "It's not about starting over. It's about starting truer to yourself than ever before." And as her company continued its steady climb, her renewed sense of purpose illuminated everything she touched. Proof that from the deepest pain, brilliance and warmth could, indeed, shine forth. The former company in crisis. The once vibrant boutique, which had for years radiated the warmth and authenticity of its founders, now wore a very different expression. From the outside, the shop still had its welcoming facade. Bright window displays and cheery signs, remnants of a happier era built by two passionate partners. But past the threshold, a chill lingered in the air, a subtle undercurrent of anxiety and exhaustion that seemed to seep from the very walls. At first, the changes were so gradual they almost went unnoticed. A late order here, a rushed conversation there. The employees, many of whom had been drawn to the company by its sense of open camaraderie, began to feel the loss of that invisible thread which had once bound them together. Lunch breaks became quieter. Jokes faded. Soon, gossip and whispered doubts filled the corners of the storeroom and the back office. Behind the counter, the new owner, her former best friend, wore her stress like a second skin. She answered emails with clipped politeness and shouldered every decision, often dismissing contributions from her staff. The consultant, Ethan, who had helped orchestrate the ousting of her original partner, was now a regular presence, his brisk efficiency shadowed by an air of impatience. As weeks passed, fractures appeared in the company's operations. What used to be a seamless flow of activity turned into a string of disconnected tasks. Deadlines were missed, not once, but repeatedly. Customer complaints mounted, often regarding delayed shipments or poor quality products. Without the former co-founder's talent for nurturing client relationships and her attentive ear, customers felt a loss of intimacy and trust. Regulars drifted elsewhere, seeking comfort in shops whose friendliness didn't feel forced. One of the greatest casualties was the company's spirit of collaboration. Where ideas once grew out of long conversations and shared vision, now there were directives to be followed, goals to be met, and very little space for questions. The staff felt more like assembly line workers than valued members of a creative team. Turnover, once negligible, rose sharply. The talented visual merchandiser resigned, citing a stifling atmosphere and creative stagnation. Soon after, the longest-serving cashier put in her notice, unable to reconcile the joy she had once felt with the tension that now permeated every interaction. The inventory reflected the disorder behind the scenes. Rushed supplier negotiations, motivated by price rather than quality, resulted in subpar products. Shoppers noticed missing favorites and a general decline in the uniqueness that had given the boutique its original charm. Where one-of-a-kind, thoughtfully sourced items once adorned the shelves, now generic goods sat dusty and overlooked. Reviews online grew less forgiving. A few longtime patrons shared their disappointment in candid posts. "It's just not the same anymore. Feels like they don't care. Miss the old staff." Inside the company, morale reached a low seldom imagined during the boutique's golden years. Meetings were tense, with staff avoiding eye contact, afraid of speaking out for fear of being blamed. The new owner alternated between desperate efforts to revive energy through incentives, discount competitions, overtime pay, and sharp reprimands when mistakes happened. Neither strategy seemed to work. The more she demanded, the more the remaining team members withdrew. Finances, too, began to show the strain. The margins that once grew steadily with the founder's careful stewardship now eroded. Defective shipments meant loss, while customer refunds cut further into dwindling profits. To keep up appearances, the owner borrowed against the business, taking on small loans and pushing for aggressive short-term marketing campaigns. These efforts brought momentary spikes in sales, but the shop could not regain its former glow. Worse than the daily frustrations was the chronic instability. Old friends and supporters of the business no longer dropped by. Local publications, which once praised the boutique as a neighborhood gem, now ran profiles of newer, fresher ventures. Invitations to artisan fairs and business panels dried up. Even the social media channels, once buzzing, languished despite paid advertisements. The sense of loss, though unspoken, haunted everyone involved. The internal dissonance reached a breaking point just after the boutique's anniversary. Previously a source of celebration, now quietly marked by a discounted banner and a few balloons. Tensions erupted during a heated staff meeting over schedule changes and holiday pay. Harsh words were exchanged, and 2 employees walked out, leaving the already short-handed team scrambling. Alone in her office after a particularly grueling day, the owner stared at the ledgers, her palms damp and trembling as she tallied up bills, unpaid invoices, and shrinking reserves. Recommendations from the consultant and external advisors began to blur into one refrain. Cut costs, streamline, scale back. The things that had once set the boutique apart, a personal touch, a sense of belonging, a connection to the community, were now considered dispensable luxuries by a management desperate to survive. Internally, guilt gnawed at her, even if she rarely admitted it aloud. Pride stopped her from reaching out to her former partner. After all, she was the one who had insisted on striking out alone for the sake of control, of ambition. Now, the hollow victory felt more like a defeat. At night, she scrolled through the boutique's old photo albums, seeing her former friend smiling in snapshots of grand openings and bustling markets. The cost of betrayal, calculated in isolation and regret, was a debt she hadn't foreseen. By autumn's arrival, the business teetered on the brink of collapse. Each day brought fresh worries: angry emails, bounced checks, refusal of credit from long-standing suppliers. The staff, reduced to a skeletal crew, counted down the hours to closing with relief instead of pride. Customers who still visited eyed the shelves skeptically, comparing the present with the past, rarely hiding their disappointment. The consequences of lost trust, fractured vision, and compromised values had come home to roost. The boutique, once alive with laughter and hope, now stood as a cautionary tale in the neighborhood, a stark reminder that success built on division cannot last. In her heart, The former friend knew if she didn't find a way to heal the wounds she had caused and seek help from the one person she had driven away, there might be no future left for her beloved business at all. Reunion and decision. It had been more than a year since they'd last spoken in earnest. The silence between them had grown thick with everything they hadn't said. Resentments, regrets, unshed tears. In that time, both women had changed in ways neither could have predicted. While one rose from rock bottom to new heights, the other found herself battling the slow collapse of a dream she thought she could control alone. On a gray morning tinged with spring's first hints, the message came. It was tentative, nearly apologetic, and painfully short. She chose a neutral place, a quiet cafe far from their old haunts. When her former best friend arrived, she was a shadow of her old self, shoulders tense, eyes rimmed by fatigue that no makeup could hide. The greeting was stiff, filled with the awkward choreography of two people who'd once known each other's secrets but now didn't know where to start. For a long time, they sat in silence, the main character waiting, the other searching for words. Finally, her former friend began, her voice brittle but honest. The company was failing, bleeding money, losing clients and staff, its reputation bruised beyond repair. She spoke without embellishment, admitting the things she could no longer hide, her missteps, her pride, her inability to recreate the magic that had come so effortlessly when they were together. The new consultant's methods had hollowed out the brand, draining away the heart and community that had once set them apart. "I thought I was making the right choices," she said in a low voice, eyes fixed on her coffee. "I wanted to prove I could do it, that I didn't need anyone. But I was wrong about so much. I was wrong about you." Forgiveness was nowhere near, but compassion came more easily than expected. The main character listened, her own scars aching in the presence of so much vulnerability. She recognized herself in those confessions, the same sting of failure, the weight of disappointment, the urge to hide weakness from the world. Only now, she realized, she had survived her heartbreak and emerged stronger for it. She could afford to hear pain she hadn't caused. Her former friend swallowed hard and finally asked, "Would you come back?" "I don't think the company will last another season." "I need you. The team needs you. Name your terms. I'll do anything." The words hung heavy in the air, evidence of both regret and the desperation wrought by disaster. Resisting the urge to answer emotionally, the main character took her time. She thought of the new life she'd built, the people who supported her, and the sense of purpose she'd discovered without compromise. She thought, too, of the employees still hanging on at the old boutique, of loyal customers mourning the loss of something rare and meaningful, and of the legacy they'd once dreamed of creating together. After a long pause, she spoke with clarity that surprised even herself. "If I return, there are conditions, non-negotiable ones. This isn't about rescuing you, or even the company. It's about rebuilding something worthy, something that can last for everyone's sake. I need autonomy, total financial transparency. The toxic consultant is gone, day one, no exceptions. If we save the brand, it's only if we return to the values that made us special in the first place." Her former friend nodded, too relieved even to push back. There was a humility in her acceptance that hadn't been there before, a surrender that went deeper than desperation alone. Instead of the old, blinding confidence, she now carried the hard-won awareness only great mistakes can bring. They spoke for hours, untangling the mess of logistics, unresolved resentments, and strategic choices. The main character laid out a precise turnaround plan, restoring the original product lines, reaching out personally to lost employees and clients, and launching a series of community engagement events to signal a new, yet familiar, direction. She insisted on open book accounting and a reformed team structure, where decisions would require consensus and frontline staff had a voice in the business's future. The conversation shifted from the past to the present, then cautiously to the future. "You might hate me," the other said, voice trembling, "but I still believe we could be stronger if we work together. Maybe not like before, maybe never that close again, but I want to try to be the kind of partner you deserved." The main character's response was guarded but firm. "I can't promise forgiveness, but I can promise honesty, as long as the company and the people matter more than pride or ego. If we do this, it's a new chapter, not a repeat of the last one. It only works if we do this right, together." In the weeks that followed, every meeting and email was charged with tension and hope. The return was not a triumphant homecoming, but a cautious, meticulously managed transition. Some staff welcomed her back with tears and relief. Others eyed her warily, skeptical of reconciliation. The community's reaction was mixed, and online forums buzzed with rumors. Trust, broken so completely, would not mend overnight. But slowly, the changes took hold. The consultant left, and the atmosphere lightened tangibly. Old team members were personally approached and rehired whenever possible. Former customers, touched by humble apologies and the return of beloved products, began trickling back. For every step forward came reminders of the pain, misunderstandings, lingering mistrust, contentious debates about leadership. But the OC company stopped its slide and started inching toward recovery. In private, the two founders worked through their history with painful honesty. There were apologies, but also new boundaries and structures to protect everyone involved. Through conflict resolution workshops and retreats, the entire staff was empowered to share their side of the story and help shape the company's next identity. For her part, the main character guarded her heart, but found unexpected pride in seeing something broken start to heal, not out of nostalgia, but out of a refusal to let betrayal have the last word. Her efforts no longer stemmed from blind loyalty or old dreams, but from a hard-won wisdom that real leadership meant learning from wounds, giving second chances only when they were truly earned, and never again sacrificing herself for a partnership built on imbalances. Eventually, the boutique reached a fragile kind of equilibrium. No longer the naive haven of the early years, it was now something more authentic, resilient, humble, stronger for its scars. The founders, changed by failure and forgiveness, worked side by side with a professional respect that sometimes rekindled moments of old friendship, but without the illusions that had proven so costly. On the anniversary of her return, the main character stood in the shop's window as dusk painted the street outside. She felt no regret for the year she'd spent away. If anything, that distance had given her the strength to lead on her own terms. She still missed the innocence of the past, but she cherished the hard-won clarity she had now. The company would never be what it once was, but perhaps, with time, it could become something new. Proof that even the deepest wounds, when met with humility and resolve, could heal into futures stronger than anyone imagined.